This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet World, West Alabama. How are you doing today on this Wednesday hump day? We appreciate everybody who's watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. You're watching The Joe Gaither Show, or you're listening to The Joe Gaither Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. Hopefully going to have a fun little show for you guys today. We're going to start by talking Alabama football. We'll talk about Keelon Russell and what his commitment means to Alabama. We got that news right in the middle of the show yesterday, so we're going to talk about Keelon Russell, the quarterback out of Duncanville High School, and we'll talk to our friend Matt Guzman from Inside the Spurs or /Spurs Central. And then we'll talk to Austin Bidwell about Major League Baseball and the Kansas City Royals, as the Royals are right in the middle of a big-time series with the Cleveland Guardians. So that's what's going to be on tap for today. As always, you can get in on the comments at Joe Gaither6. Leave me a comment, question, query, or complaint on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube at Joe Gaither6. And, of course, you can rate, review, subscribe to the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on Amazon. We appreciate Chris Walsh putting us on each and every day. You can find the show at BamaCentral.com or on any of the Walsh Writing Network websites, Spurs Central, Royal Central, Mizzou Central, Cowbell Corner for now. We'll get it all on all of the Walsh Writing Network websites talking about all kinds of sports. So let's get us started with Keelon Russell. On yesterday, how about we do it like that? Yesterday, Keelon Russell flipped from Southern SMU to Alabama. And people had a lot of the Alabama faithful were very excited because he represents the first quarterback commitment in Kalen DeBoer's tenure here at Alabama. And we're looking at the quarterbacks. You're looking through side. You're trying to decide, how bad you need a quarterback, this, that, and the other class. And so Keelon Russell becomes the quarterback for the 2025 recruiting class. Roster right there. Yep. And people talk about, let's look at his measurables. We hit it yesterday. He's 6'3". He's 175. But here we are looking at his huddle tape. And as you look at his huddle tape, he's a two-time state champion at Duncanville High School, 6A in Texas. Notice these logos on the middle of the field. He's playing over in Jerry World. He's playing at SMU. He's playing at big-time Texas high school environments. And so, you see 6'3", you see 175, and you think, oh, gosh, he needs to put on some more weight. But look at his tape. He doesn't look like 175 pounds. He looks bigger than that. When you look at him, the 175, you got to look through it. Okay, he's got some really skinny legs. We're watching his huddle tape. If you're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter, if you're just listening to us, I'm sorry, you're not seeing what we're seeing. But Keelon Russell, here he is carrying 97 yards, 98 yards that he takes it to the house rushing. If he gets all the way there, no, he doesn't. But basically from the goal line to the other end, rushing, I think that this young man's going to be A-okay coming into the University of Alabama and getting with the strength and conditioning program. Let's look at that. Getting with the strength and conditioning program and getting ready for when it is his turn to play quarterback here at Alabama. If he sticks with it, the transfer portal doesn't come into play. But you think about it, you're not going to need him right off the bat. You got Jalen Milroe, redshirt junior. He's going to take over. He's going to basically carry you all the way through 2024. And really, if he wanted to, if he doesn't have a good year, he can carry you through 2025. Everybody talks about Ty Simpson, redshirt sophomore. He's going to be here. 2024 is his redshirt sophomore year, 25 and 2026. Like if he plays out his eligibility. And then you got that kid, Austin Mack. Austin Mack entering his redshirt freshman season. So he's going to be here 24 for his freshman year, 25, 26, and 27. So you don't need this young man to play until 2028 if everything goes according to plan. And if you're listening to this show, you pay attention to college sports. That doesn't always go according to plan. So at the earliest, if everybody sticks around, Keelon Russell is going to be taking snaps for the University of Alabama in 2028. So everybody is looking at that weight saying, oh gosh, 175, that's too small, that's too skinny. I say just give the man some patience. Give the guy some time to develop his body. He's still in the rising senior category. He's still entering his senior year of high school. But what do we see when we're watching this film? We see an offense, first off, that's wide open, an offense that is testing defenses vertically down the field, and a quarterback who is getting the ball out on time and really pushing the ball down the field, giving his wide receivers a lot of chances to run after the catch with accurate ball placement. I think this is a great get for Alabama. Now, I said it yesterday, but you go online, as we always do, and you see lots of people, oh, Kalen DeBoer, he can't recruit. Husky Harsin had to get a flip from SMU. This guy's not really any good. He flipped from, look, he was only recruited by SMU, XYZ ABC, small school, poo. Well, come on. Let's look at the class. Let's look at the quarterback class, and let's talk about it. You got Bryce Underwood, who is the consensus number 1 overall player. And Bryce Underwood is already in the bag with LSU. All right, no big deal. You got Tavian St. Clair, who's in the bag with Ohio State. Julian Lewis, who a lot of you guys are familiar with, out of Carrollton, Georgia, who's basically already in the bag with Southern California. Husan Longstreet is out of Corona, California, the number 4 quarterback in the class. He's committed to Texas A&M. George McIntyre was on campus several times this past year. Quarterback out of Brentwood Academy in Tennessee, 6'5", 190. He's committed to Tennessee. He committed to Tennessee a while back. And Matt Zollers from Pennsylvania committed to Missouri. So here you go. Your next best quarterback, 7th best quarterback in the class, Keelon Russell. Now, would you have liked to have had maybe Bryce Underwood or Julian Lewis? I think absolutely you would have. But Bryce Underwood was always going to go to LSU. He was never going to be really available for Kalen DeBoer to flip. Okay, so he's off. Julian Lewis has been honestly flirting with Auburn, he's been committed to USC, but he's been flirting with Alabama, flirting with Auburn. He's been flirting with a lot of schools. But I think Julian Lewis, now this is just speculation from reading tea leaves. I think Julian Lewis is going to be looking for a big old NIL bag. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And maybe you think there is, but for me, I love that. I don't hate that one bit. He's already made himself into a top 3, top 4 player in this class. So by all means, go ahead and capitalize on your name, image, and likeness. And then George McIntyre, I don't know that George McIntyre really fits the new system as well. Fits Kalen DeBoer as well. So I'm really excited. I think Keelon Russell is a good fit. Not only not only because he was the best available, and really, I guess he wasn't available. He was committed to SMU, but you talked him into flipping. He came to Alabama for an official visit last weekend, and he immediately basically flips to the Crimson Tide. We talked about it yesterday as we were kind of reacting to the immediate news that he had official visits scheduled with Florida and with Oregon. Well, he told 24/7 Sports that he was canceling those official visits, that he's locked in with the Crimson Tide. So I think that this young man is a pretty good get for Alabama. What does he do for the class? He takes them from number 10, 11, 12 class in the country to now they're up to number 8. So a nice small little bump. But you get a guy who can be looked at as the leader of the class. You get a guy who can really be point man for these recruits. And so I think it's very, very important for Kalen DeBoer to get this commit. You look at him. He looks like right here in these highlights from Duncanville, if you put a purple and gold uniform on them, this might look like Penix out of Washington. Now, of course, I think Michael Penix wasn't as mobile as Keelon Russell has shown. It seems to me that Keelon is not really looking to run in a lot of these highlights, but he can run if need be. There's a couple quarterback runs in these highlights, and he does well with them. I think this guy is somebody that Alabama fans should absolutely be excited about. I mean, you can hear the rival fan bases talking about SMU commit all you want to, but then you put on the film and you realize this is Texas 6A high school football, and I think it's very, very impressive what he's doing. I mean, he's led Duncanville to a state championship the last 2 years as a sophomore and a junior. Now, of course, he's at Duncanville, so he's playing with really, really good players. That helps for sure. But he's not going to be playing with scrubs here at Alabama either. I think the Alabama fans should be very, very excited about Keelon Russell and about his commitment. Want to turn your attention to BamaCentral.com. If you guys are trying to get ready for the season, Alabama is 86, 87 days away from the Crimson Tide season getting started. And on BamaCentral.com, we have early previews already for week 1 and week 2. My man Blake Byler wrote Western Kentucky preview, and I wrote South Florida's for our cover this morning. So make sure you check those out as you're trying to get yourself ready for the season. The next one up will be Wisconsin. That'll be coming, I think, on Friday. We'll start doing them every few days, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, until they are all done. So I'm really, really excited about this coming up season. One thing I didn't realize, I thought I was taking the South Florida game for granted, but they returned 18 starters. 10 on offense, and eight on defense. Now, their defense was really not good last year. They finished 113 or so in total defense, but their offense really was pretty good for a smaller, for an American Conference team. They finished 33rd in total offense last year with a true freshman, redshirt freshman quarterback, Byron Brown. And look, Byron Brown didn't really have a great passing game against Alabama last season, but he did break free on a handful of scrambles. A lot of them were on busted plays, this, that, and the other. And you remember what was it, 17-3, a victory for Alabama. Never felt to me like it was in danger of losing, but Alabama just didn't play well, especially offensively. So it's going to be an interesting matchup. And I think South Florida could end up being a team that Alabama fans are very happy is on its schedule, not only because it's a win, it's a likely win, we'll say that, a likely win, but I think South Florida, with 18 returning starters, second-year coach Alex Golish, I think that they could challenge for an American Conference championship. They finished 5th in the American last season, and he's coming from the Josh Heupel tree. I think that, one, it may not be as easy of a victory as Alabama fans are expecting. I think Alabama fans are expecting big-time retribution for last season's kind of challenges down there in Tampa. But you bring in the wide-open Josh Heupel system against it'll be your second game against the Alabama secondary that has a lot of new faces. I think it could be a little more challenging than the experts are maybe predicting, 85, 86 days away from the start of the season. You got a 32-point favorite against Western Kentucky. The line for week 2 has not been out yet, but I'd expect it to be somewhere in the mid-20s, 28, 25, just depending on how Alabama plays in the first week. But all this to say is I am expecting a better game than normal. I think Alabama's going to play better than they did last year in Tampa, but I think South Florida will as well. I'm really looking forward to this matchup, basically schematic-wise, because I think it tests Alabama's defense early, and it will serve. I think the Crimson Tide will look back on the end of the year and say, "Oh, we're glad we played that team. They got us ready to play Georgia 2 weeks later. You got Wisconsin an off week, and then Georgia." So I think that the South Florida game is going to be a lot of fun. It'll be 6 o'clock on September 7th. That was my preview. That was my assignment for this morning's cover on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com. Not a whole lot of Alabama news going on this week, or excuse me, not a whole lot of Alabama news going on right now outside of recruiting. In addition to Keelon Russell's recruitment, or Keelon Russell's flip, Alabama extended a pretty significant scholarship offer yesterday to Justice Fitzgerald. And you think, oh, who's that? That's Minka Fitzpatrick's younger brother. Justice Fitzpatrick. Oh my gosh, I said Fitzgerald. Fitzpatrick. Loser. Justice Fitzpatrick is Minka Fitzpatrick's younger brother. Justice Fitzpatrick is a top five safety in the class. He's playing at St. Thomas Aquinas down there in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And you look at Alabama's class of 2026, you already have 2 defensive backs. You go ahead and snag Minka's younger brother to make that class up to 3. I think that you're doing really fine work on the class of 2026 already. Now, obviously, the class of 25 is the pressing need, and you're doing fairly well with getting your quarterback in the class and having 11 commits so far. I'm laughing a little bit at the folks who said, Keelon DeBoer, can his staff recruit? Can he come down and recruit the South? I think that there's a little bit of maybe not arrogance, no, but a misunderstanding that these guys are college coaches. They go in there and make relationships. I mean, a lot of times that's why first years are a little more difficult everywhere. But if you just embrace the grind, I mean, these high schools in the South want their kids to go to prime programs, and Alabama is a prime program. All Keelon DeBoer's got to do is put in the work, meet the coaches, be himself, sell the program, and boom, you're going to start racking up commitments just like they've been doing really since they've been on campus and gotten started. So Justice Fitzpatrick, not Fitzgerald, Justice Fitzpatrick gets extended a scholarship offer yesterday by the Alabama Crimson Tide staff. He had a scholarship offer under Nick Saban, but now the new regime has offered him a scholarship, and so he could be a great addition to Alabama's class of 2026. I wonder just a little bit, if Justice has any apprehension coming to Tuscaloosa, considering how great Minka was here, and he was absolutely fantastic. Probably one of the top 5 or 6 players in the Nick Saban era, only playing, 3 years and going to become a first-round draft pick. I wonder if that creates any apprehension in Justice Fitzpatrick's mind, but we'll just have to see, as he still has a year and 6 months until he has to make his official commitment, sign his name on the dotted line next December. So we're going to turn things over to our friend Matt Guzman. Matt Guzman covers the San Antonio Spurs with Inside the Spurs. And then after that, we're going to talk to our friend Austin Bidwell, who covers the Kansas City Royals for Inside the Royals. The Royals are in a huge series right now with the Cleveland Guardians. They're 5 games back in the division. So if they can get a win or 2 over the Guardians, it's going to be very, very important. We appreciate both those guys giving us their time today. Here's our conversations with Austin Bidwell and Matt Guzman. Welcome back to the Joe Gaither Show. We're going to keep things rolling right here on a Wednesday. You're watching us on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube at Joe Gaither 6. We're proud part of the Walsh Writing Network. And we're going to keep things going, talking NBA. Goodness gracious, the finals start tomorrow. Boston Celtics and the Dallas Mavericks getting going tomorrow in Boston. But we're not here to talk about those teams. We're here to talk about the San Antonio Spurs with our friend Matt Guzman. You can find him on the Twitter machine at MattGZMan. You can read all his great work at Spurs Central / Inside the Spurs. We're going to get the name worked out right here on the Walsh Writing Network. We appreciate Matt's time. We're excited to continue getting to know him and talking some NBA. Matt, how we doing today, man?
Doing well. It's as you can see, I'm in my hotel room here in Phoenix. Just finished up a week-long boot camp out here for journalism. It's been a fun experience. It's been good to be out here, experience a new city. But I thank you for having me. Thank you for your time. It's always great.
No problem. I appreciate you joining us while you're learning and getting ready for other ventures and things. So it's an exciting time for the NBA. The season has come to a head. You're right here on the finals. You want to talk finals first? You want to talk Spurs move first? Well, what were you feeling like?
Let's do finals.
That feels appropriate. The finals are getting going tomorrow night in Boston. Boston, obviously, the league favorite virtually the entire year. They've made it to the finals. They're taking on the Dallas Mavericks. You got Luka Doncic, the Kyrie Irving, Kristaps Porzingis, lots of intertwining stories. How do you feel about the finals? And particularly, I mean, you've been covering the Spurs all season long. You've seen the Spurs drop 6 games to these 2 teams. What are we in for in this year's NBA Finals?
Yeah, well, I think it's funny that you mentioned that I've seen both these teams is true. The most notable for me was New Year's Eve whenever the Celtics came to town. And that was that game where Wembanyama had that crazy dunk where he basically he started making his 2 steps from like behind the key, behind the 3-point line. And then he just kind of like airwalked it and just it was ridiculous. There was a lot of energy in the building that night, but as you said, like the Spurs have fallen to these teams. They're a combined 0-6 between 4 matchups with the Mavericks and 2 with the Celtics, including the season opening loss that, came down to the final seconds. Both these teams are very good. And I know that it was a big question mark with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, that pairing, especially because last season they got Kyrie mid-season, kind of towards the, around February. And from the point that he joined the team, it almost seemed like the Mavs got worse. And basically the narrative was that they weren't going to work out. And it was just proof that, you never trade for Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic needs somebody else. Well, they kind of proved everybody wrong this year. They definitely found their groove, found their rhythm, and they behaved as a team. I mean, that's the end of the day. If you get to the finals, it's because of how good you are as a collective. And so the Mavs looked good. They look good right now. I think Luka and Kyrie have found exactly what they need to be doing. But on the other hand, like you mentioned, the Celtics are the favorite, and they've been all year. I mean, they added Drew Holiday, they added Kristaps Porzingis. It was supposed to be a team bound for the finals, and luckily for them, because if they hadn't made it, they would have never heard the end of it. But luckily for them, they're in the finals now. They've got a chance to prove that there's no more Western Eastern Conference bias. The best team in the East is the best team in the league. They have a chance to prove that, and so I'm curious to see.
Well, a lot of the pundits are talking about Dallas's inability to play defense, but that hasn't really come back to bite them. Obviously, they've made the finals, and I've got buddies who are Boston fans who are saying, "Oh, Drew Holiday and his defense will carry Boston to the finals." You get a lot of people talking about Jason Tatum and if he's really that guy or not. But what do you think of the offense and defensive matchup when you talk about the Mavericks? Look, you automatically think about Luka Doncic and how just absurd he is, and he's been absurd really since he's come into the league. But can the Mavericks play enough team defense to slow down the Boston Celtics and make this a series?
I believe they can. I think they can. And I saw a comment the other day, it was kind of made me laugh, is that they're saying Jason Kidd's biggest win of the season as a coach hasn't been getting him to the finals. It's been getting Kyrie and Luka to buy into playing defense. And, obviously NBA players all play defense. It's not as bad as people make it out to be, but guys like Luka have been notorious for kind of half-assing or just going half speed in the half court. And so to see them both like kind of put forth all that effort both on offense and defense has been, I think that they can definitely harness what they've been harnessing all playoffs and put together a solid defense. But I mean, that's a hard task when you're facing Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown and bringing back Kristaps Porzingis. I mean, it's a tough ask. I think Dallas can do it, so it's just a matter of how cohesive they really have been. This is their chance to prove it.
The NBA Finals start tomorrow night, Thursday at 7:30. You can watch them on ABC. We'll be paying attention to it right here on the Joe Gaither Show. The Spurs are a 6.5-point favorite in the opening game. What do you think? We'll pin you down. What are you predicting for the series?
I think I've got Celtics winning it. I really do think that they're going to come in, and especially adding Kristaps back, that was one of the big pieces of their offseason. I think that they're gonna get it together. I think they're gonna put together a good 6 games and take it home.
All right. Yep. I wrote down Boston and 6 in my notes as well. So it seems like we're on the same page now. I'll pull back the curtain. I'll be pulling for Dallas. And we'll see if they can pull off the upset. But I think it's going to be too tall of a task. Let me ask you a little more about the Mavericks. Obviously, Luka is their shining star and shining piece. And you think about, okay, he was drafted from Slovenia, he's part of the international wave in the NBA. You've got Nikola Jokic, and then your man, your guy, Victor Wembanyama for the San Antonio Spurs. So what's it going to mean? We've seen Jokic basically rise to top 1, top 3 player in the league, and Luka is in that top 1, top 8 player in the league. How quickly, obviously Victor Wembanyama had a really, really good season this year, NBA Rookie of the Year. How quickly can he put himself in that class with the Lukas and with the Nikola Jokic where, he might be tonight, he's the best player in the league, and maybe on his worst night, he's the 7th or 8th best player in the league.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean, and he's really close. He's really close. I wouldn't go as far as to say that he was that this year, just because he wasn't nearly as consistent as he would want to be. But he showed flashes of that exact player already. In his 5th game, he had the 38-point game and he beat Phoenix, and everyone was kind of freaking out, like, oh my God, like, is this guy gonna be? Is he gonna average 30 points a game as a rookie? And obviously he didn't, but next season he's primed for something like that, and maybe not 30 points a game, but he's primed to take that step up and really, he's going to average a double-double from the get-go. He's going to be putting up 4 or 5 blocks a game. And, it's interesting because I want to see, now that he's had a season under his belt, the things that he takes to the offseason, because when he came into the league, I guess just a year ago, he wasn't playing in the FIBA World Cup, so he had time to prepare, but he didn't quite know what to expect or what to prepare for. So now that he's had that year under his belt, he knows exactly what it's like, exactly what he needs to do. And I could see himself catapulting into that category just next season, because he had 7 All-NBA votes. It's not, he wasn't close to making the 3rd team, but the fact that he had votes says a lot, because when you tally up the numbers and the point totals, he was, by points, one of the 20 best players in the league. And his peers have already voted him the best defender in the league as a rookie. And he's only set to grow. And so I really could see him catapulting into that category, especially if he just continues to harness, the talent and things that he can do on the court, both on offense and defense. I mean, there's no reason that he can't be one of the best players when all said and done, certainly the most unique. It's just a matter of how quickly he can get out of the gate running and really get to going.
Obviously, his measurables pop off the page. You see 7'3", 7'4", and you see just the arms, the length, and okay, he can shoot and dribble. But let's take a little step back. What do you make of, Victor's a little bit of a unique situation, but what do you make of the really international resurgence? Like, you've got a lot, Kristaps Porzingis, you've got a lot of players that are not from America, and that's fine, that's no big deal, that have really come into the NBA and said, this is a world league now. What do you think is behind that?
I just think it's been, I think the NBA has long been the most popular league in the world for basketball. You have players over international who play overseas, right? But the goal is always to make the NBA. And I think it's just gotten easier for players who are overseas to come in and be like, you know what, I'm going to learn this type of basketball, and I want to, because I want to be on the big stage. That's kind of how they're seeing it, because you could be a professional overseas, but it looks a little bit different. You can be playing even guys like LaMelo Ball were playing overseas in high school with the goal of coming back for the United States NBA. And so I just think it's a matter of, I don't think the talent has grown. I just think it's become a bigger, globally, it's become a bigger collective goal that, yes, we want to play for the NBA. And I don't think they're coming into the league saying we're going to prove that America's not as good as us, but they want to be on the biggest stage in the world, and that's what makes the Olympics or the FIBA World Cup, like we saw last summer, so exciting, because no longer is it a shoo-in for the United States team to win. Now, obviously, I'd love for the United States team to win, but, seeing guys like Victor and Rudy over at France, seeing guys like Rui Hachimura on Japan, and, there's just so many different players that get to proudly represent their team, even Giannis in Greece. And I just think it's becoming a more, I guess it's more popular for players of international, heritage and background to want to play in the NBA. And I guess up until this point, it hasn't exactly been that, but now that they're here, everybody wants to go, and now you're going to get a French prospect about every year who everybody's like, is this the next Victor? Probably not, but there's going to be options.
We're hanging out with Matt Guzman. You're reading him at Inside the Spurs or Spurs Central. Follow him at Matt GZman on the Twitter machine. Matt, you've been writing a lot about the offseason, so we're going to hit a couple of your pieces and kind of get some insight and thoughts on them. Let's start with an absurd one. Our friend Gilbert Arenas is okay. Oh, he's one. talking about international players. This isn't in your article, but one of his takes was ban all the NBA international players. That was one that I saw from him. But I want to talk about what you wrote about. You wrote about his take that Steph Curry is not a generational player. And, of course, Steph Curry is not 7 foot, and he's not, dunking from the free throw line. But, I played basketball as an adolescent poorly, and I had a friend who could shoot. Yeah, I had a friend who could shoot pretty well, and he would laugh at me every time he would make three-pointers, rightfully so. But Steph Curry's on another level, making him from 30, 33 feet, all over the place. What in the world is Gilbert Arenas? I mean, what is he getting at calling Steph Curry not a generational player? I mean, Steph Curry has changed the game through, with all the youth basically saying, I don't want to slam dunk anymore. I want to shoot a three-pointer.
Right. I mean, and the thing, I guess the point that Gilbert Arenas was trying to make was that if you can mimic the talent, it's not generational. So he was arguing that you can't mimic somebody who's 7'4" unless you're 7'4". You can't mimic someone like LeBron James unless you play 21 years in the league at the level that he's playing at. And I guess he was arguing that you can come in and just shoot as well as Curry if you're good enough. And I mean, sure, you can be a really good three-point shooter, but I think the idea of being a generational player is the fact that when you're gone, are the generations after you going to remember your name? I mean, and I think Curry has absolutely proven that. I mean, there's it's kind of like a changing of the tide. Kids back in the day used to shoot and yell Kobe because that was the thing to do. Some kids still do, but a lot of them now will shoot and say Curry, or they'll, they in the little 7-8-year-old leagues, you're seeing them pull up from 30 feet and you're like, what are you doing? But it's because of Curry, because of that influence. He's made the 3-point popular with kids that grew up watching him, with fans of the game that now want to be like Steph Curry more than they want to be like somebody like LeBron even. You don't see anybody posting up in the mid-range and fade away in the middle yelling LeBron. I mean, people are shooting from 30 feet to prove that they can. Guys like Trae Young are even an example, because Trae Young is another one of those players who've come in and just really set the three-point line ablaze. And, he was in college and in high school when Curry was doing his thing. And so you could argue that he had an influence on Trae Young. I just think it's crazy. I don't think specifically with regards to Curry, I don't think that anybody can argue that he's not generational. And I think Gilbert got some good backlash from his take there. I guess I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are on that.
Oh, I mean, it's just like you said. You watch youth basketball, and the kids are shooting from as far out as they can, and they're shooting from their shoulder, throwing it up there. Look, I was watching Steph Curry when he was at Davidson, and you saw him, okay, what's this guy? Is he a gimmick? He takes them through the NCAA tournament a bit, and you remember the early days of Steph Curry with the ankles, and okay, maybe he's too weak to play in the NBA. But he's a guy that's really just said, okay, this is what I am, and we're going to refine it, and we're going to get really good at it. And because he's been so good shooting from deep, it's opened up other options for him to get to the rim if he wants. Obviously, he's not going to be attacking the rim all the time, but for me, generational is what do you leave the game? And what Steph Curry has left the game with is a whole group of kids. I mean, Trae Young's a perfect example. A whole generation of younger kids who said, "Oh, we can play the game this way." I might not be 6'6", and I might not be a great defender, but I can carve myself out a role in the league this way. I mean, look. Right here in Alabama, Mark Sears returned to Alabama, but part of what he was able to offer NBA draft scouts was, I can shoot the three ball. Yeah, I'm 5'10", but I can shoot the three ball. Right. We'll see what happens with him over the next 12 months. But to me, a lot of these podcasts, and I try not to do it here. Sometimes I might do it here, but a lot of they just say stuff to grab your attention, and I feel like Gilbert Arenas has been really, really good at that. I mean, Steph Curry is not generational. That's one of his lines. And then he had, a couple of weeks earlier was, we should ban all Europeans from the game. And it's like, what are you talking? First off, racist. Sorry, buddy. We can't be doing that. That's not becoming of anyone. But the game the league has become so much better with the international players. I mean, they may not be your favorite. I mean, Nikola Jokic looks like a guy who plays in your YMCA league, but he's incredible. And so, like, it may not be your favorite style aesthetically, and Luka's kind of that same, oh, do I like his style? But the ball goes in the hoop at a really, really high rate, and they have made the rest of they have filled out the competitive balance of the league. I mean, yeah,
Right.
When I was a kid, it was like, oh, you got two teams, one in the East and one in the West. Well, now you saw what happened in the Western Conference this year. You've lived it. The number 5 seed goes to the NBA Finals, and their Western Conference opponent was the 3 seed. Like, Gilbert Arenas is a crazy person, in my opinion. You've heard his story about bringing the gun into the locker room with him when he was a Wizard, right?
Yeah, I have. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it's just more of that with Gilbert Arenas. What do you think about these guys with their podcast? I mean, Gilbert's out of the game. Draymond Green has his after, pretty regularly. Patrick Beverly made his noise pretty recently. Oh, if you're not subscribed to my podcast, you can't ask me a question, which is a bunch of hooey. And now the Lakers are about to hire a podcast host, not really, but hire JJ Redick as their next head coach. Yeah. What do you think about these guys and their podcasts?
I mean, and it's funny you mentioned that, because we had Michael Wilbon come in and speak to us this week, and he just went off about the podcast culture and what it's become. And exactly for the reason that you just mentioned, was that these athletes are just getting on and knowing that who they are, that they can say anything and it'll blow up. And so they're hopping on their podcast and what's the most outrageous thing I can say to get some views? And at this point, Gilbert might actually believe what he said, but some of these athletes really just do it for the clicks. And you mentioned Draymond Green's podcast. I mean, that's been a hit. I've enjoyed listening to that a few times. And maybe that's because he's still in it and he's talking about these players that he's facing. Whenever he was smashing Dylan Brooks on his podcast, I was entertained. I was like, yeah, I don't like Dylan Brooks as is, so it makes sense that you don't like him. And so it's just things like that, and you mentioned JJ Redick. I mean, it's wild that we're now going to have a podcast with the star player and the coach, and the player is honestly like the same age as the coach. Is like, it's crazy. Like, I just think that it's definitely a thing that's been trending, like this podcast culture. It's the hip thing to do. And I mean, as journalists, if we want to take it even deeper, it's tougher to navigate this industry, because now you're having players who can say whatever they want and they'll get more clicks than you. And so at the same time, it's like, there's a platform and there's a space, and everybody has their platform now, where it didn't used to be the case. I mean, like, the columnist for the New York Times used to be the most coveted man in New York, because whatever he said was what was happening. Now anybody can hop on a podcast, make their takes, and it's changed a lot, and I think that stuff like this is a perfect example of, what podcast culture can be in a negative way. Now, there's a lot of positives to it, but it's just interesting to see. I'm curious to see what JJ Redick does with the Lakers. I'm curious to see what Gilbert Arenas has to say next. It might just get worse. Who knows? But it's definitely interesting. It's been a changing landscape for sure.
All right, we're going to keep going with one of your articles that you wrote on Inside the Spurs / Spurs Central. Malik Monk, 6th man of the year, has found kind of himself a little home with the Sacramento Kings, but seems like, okay, if he can't get things done with the Kings, where does the Spurs stand as a fallback option? And really, you wrote about how the Spurs have a pretty high salary number available to them. Could they monetarily tease or tempt Malik Monk to give the Spurs a chance?
Absolutely they could. Now, I don't know if you saw the recent report from Jonathan Givney on ESPN, but he came out and he had a quote that said that every free agent and veteran guard, every single one of them, wants to play with Victor Wembanyama. And I think that was something that we kind of thought would happen halfway through the season. It became clear that, well, would the Spurs want to make a trade for the trade deadline? Because players would be enticed to go and play with him. And that's still the case. I mean, you've got guys like Chris Paul even that are being considered because, he's a veteran presence, and even he's going to want to play with Victor, and so it's just, Malik Monk is one of those guys. He's uber athletic. He's really, really good at what he does. He was 6 Man of the Year candidate when he was in the Lakers. I loved him on the Lakers. He's done a lot of great things. He's proven that he's a young guy. He's athletic. He can come in and learn a system and play a system very well, which is exactly someone the Spurs need. Is someone who can come in and play a system. And especially with Victor, Malik Monk's not going to come in and demand the ball and be the star player. He knows where he sits, and he's going to want to give lobs to Victor. And he's going to want to be able to create his own shots when everyone is focused on Victor. And so it's guys like that are absolutely enticed to play with Victor, because who wouldn't want to play with a 7'4" center that functions as a power forward? It makes sense why people want to come to San Antonio and play. And so I really do think that the Spurs have a compelling case, especially with Malik Monk.
All right, let's get you out of here on this. We've been talking to Matt Guzman from Inside the Spurs / Spurs Central. You can follow him at Matt GZman on the Twitter machine. We appreciate it if you do. He's going to give you all kinds of NBA coverage throughout the offseason. Chris Herring of ESPN, writer for ESPN. Let me make sure I get your title right, Chris. Chris Herring, ESPN senior writer. Yep. Writes on May 28th, so about middle of last week. 10 blockbuster trades or deals that need to happen this offseason. This is on ESPN Plus. And, okay, some of these are a little bit crazy, or some of these are a little bit, not crazy, but a little bit far-fetched. He's got Oklahoma City signing Klay Thompson. He's got the Lakers signing Paul George, the Lakers trading for Trae Young. But I click Control F and look for the Spurs, and his option for the Spurs is to trade for Darius Garland. You talk about guards wanting to play with Victor Wembanyama. What do you feel, or what would be your opinion on the Spurs trading for Darius Garland and what that fit might be like for Victor Wembanyama?
For sure. I mean, Garland has all the assets that any point guard would bring, any strong point guard would bring. He has the ability to create his own shots. He has the ability. He's a good passer. He's good at facilitating an offense. And with the Cavs, he kind of flourished whenever Colin Sexton was there, and now he's flourishing alongside Donovan Mitchell. It's just been he's kind of been a constant piece for them, and so it is what it is. The Cavs haven't won. I don't think he's going to demand a trade or anything like that. That's anything crazy, but he's definitely somebody for the Spurs to look into, just because he brings a veteran presence, but at the same time he's still young and still very impressionable, very coachable. Somebody that could definitely learn to thrive. If Darius Garland can thrive with Evan Mobley, absolutely he can thrive with Victor, and kind of feed his big man. It's just another one of those instances where if the Spurs can get somebody, whether it's through the draft or packaging picks for a deal or signing somebody in free agency, if they can get somebody that's a very reliable scorer, the way that Devin Vassell has tried to become, I believe he's going to get there. He's just not there quite yet. So if they want to bring in somebody like on the point guard, let Devin Vassell be a shooting guard, let Victor Wembanyama hold down the center, or the big role. If they get in a veteran point guard, that's somebody that can torch you while you're busy worrying about the other two stars. And that's the next step for the Spurs, I would say, is getting somebody that can get the attention off of Victor Wembanyama. Obviously, you can never completely do that, but somebody like Garland is definitely a good option.
That was Matt Guzman joining us. Make sure you go check out Inside the Spurs to read about why inside the NBA NBA losing TNT could be a good thing for Victor Wembanyama. It doesn't sound like it might be a good thing, but Matt Guzman writes about it right there on Inside the Spurs, why it could be a beneficial thing for Victor Wembanyama. We'll catch up with you next week, Matt. Enjoy the finals.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir. All right, we're back right here on the Joe Gaither Show, part of the Walsh Writing Network. We're hanging out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Amazon. You're watching us on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. We just talked to our friend Matt Guzman about the NBA Finals getting going tomorrow, trying to figure out how the Spurs can get into the NBA Finals picture maybe in a year or three behind Victor Wembanyama. Let's turn it to Major League Baseball. We just turned it to June, so we're a month away from the All-Star break, a month and a week or so away from the All-Star break, and we're going to go hang out with our friend Austin Bidwell covering the Kansas City Royals for Inside the Royals / Royals Central. We're still working on our name changes there on the Walsh Writing Network. We appreciate Austin joining us. You're following him already at Austin from KC on the Twitter machine. Austin, how's your week been, man?
It's been pretty good. Going to the Noah Khan concert tonight. That'll be fun. Got some Royals baseball this week. Hopefully they can turn it around. And, yeah, it's been good.
All right, let an out of touch old man know who is Noah Khan. What kind of music is he singing?
Pop country, a little bit in between.
What's his biggest song?
Probably Stick Season.
All right,
yeah.
Right over my head. Stick Season. Make sure you listen to it on Spotify, guys.
That's pretty good.
All right, enjoy the concert. Oh, but you've had a hard week or so with your Kansas City Royals. 1-4 since the last time we talked. That's not going to catch the Cleveland Guardians, particularly when you're blowing 5-run leads against the Guardians, as the Royals did yesterday. What's going on, man? What's the issue? Where's the breakdown over the last week or so?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of been weird. They had a big win against the Padres that they probably shouldn't have won. And that's been their only win in the last few games. And a lot of it has to do with pitching. Some of it has to do with hitting. But when you look at the runs that the Royals have allowed over the last week or so, I believe there's multiple 8-run games they've allowed. They've allowed a 5-run game. And it's from some of the guys that you want to not have those games. Last night, Seth Lugo had a rough start. Brady Singer pitches tonight. He's not, he's had a bad outing or two. Marsh, who just got hurt, didn't have a great outing. And the bullpen really just hasn't been very reliable. Last night, they let up 3 runs. Probably wasn't totally Sam Long's fault with the Bobby Witt error, but you see some of these relievers come in and you're just not confident in them, and that's hard to win games, especially against teams like the Padres or the Guardians, without your pitchers being at the top of their game.
All right, and so you're talking about pitching. You also got some bad news. Michael Wacha going on the 15-day injured list with a foot injury. How's that going to further complicate the Royals' pitching issues?
Yeah, so Wacha, hasn't been the best pitcher for the Royals this season. He's been very good, very solid. He's been a great 3-4 guy to slot in games against, other 3-4 guys. He's obviously not going to be better than Lugo or Reagans or even maybe Singer, but he was a guy that was giving the Royals a lot of depth, especially when they had guys like Chris Bubich in the minors. They had guys like Daniel Lynch had to get called up a game last week for Brady Singer when he got sick, and you already have all these guys hurting in the minors. So when you have to bring all these guys up, that's obviously never what you want. You want to be able to keep your starters, your relievers as a foundational piece of your team throughout the season. So, I mean, it's not going to hurt as much as their ace would hurt, but it's definitely not going to be something that helps the Royals going forward.
All right, we're talking about Seth Lugo. We've talked about him a couple of times on the show before. He had a really good year, but a tough outing last night, as you just kind of outlined. Is there fear that Seth Lugo might be hitting a midseason wall?
I personally have no fear of that. You look at the game last night, he let up 5 runs and 6 hits. That's not going to happen very often. He got up two home runs on, one of them was on a 2-out count, I believe. One of them was his last pitch of the game. And he had a bad outing last night, but I just posted this on Twitter. Garrett Cole last year won the Cy Young, his 11th and 12th start, he let up 5 runs apiece. So it's not like that these guys are expected to go out there and have great game after great game the entire season. It's very, it happens to pitchers to have a not great outing, especially against a team as good as the Cleveland Guardians have been, how good their bats have been, how good, all around that they've been. So I don't really think that you can point at Seth Lugo and say that this is a sign of regression, especially since this is the first outing we've seen from him since the Baltimore outing, like his second or third game of the year, that he wasn't just absolutely phenomenal in.
All right, and last night, the Royals might have had a chance had Bobby Witt Jr. not made a little bit of a throwing error. What was his reaction? Obviously, he's a star player on the team. What was his reaction to, okay, I cost – now, it's just one game, but it's a big game against the Guardians.
Yeah, so, I mean, the play, it was an awkward play. I mean, you watch it, and it looks like he's going to beat that runner second, and with a guy as fast as Bobby, I don't blame him for thinking that he was going to beat that guy to second with his speed, and then the throw was a little bit of mix of off. But, you don't really ever want to blame a single player for losing.
He still hit 2 home runs.
That's what I'm saying. He was the reason that the Royals were up 5-0, with the 2 home runs, the long one going 452. Like, he was the reason the Royals were up. And I think he made a bad play, and I think that he knows that. I think that he can acknowledge that even as a young player. But you got to also point at the offense not being able to score after the 4th inning. You got to be able to point at Lugo giving up 2 home runs. So, I mean, I don't think this team is a team that points fingers at people or, even a team that's going to worry about something like one play. But I mean, it's obviously never good to see something like that happen. And I think that going forward, it's something that a young player like Witt can work on because, again, he is still one of the youngest players in the entire league. I believe just 23 years old or something crazy like that. And he's already one of the best players, not only offensively, but defensively, despite that play.
All right, we're hanging out on Wednesday right here, June 5th. And I'm looking at the calendar and looking at the schedule. The schedule makers now obviously didn't know who was going to be leading the divisions, but this is a brutal stretch. You're in the middle of playing the Guardians, which is important enough as it is, as the Royals are 5 games behind the Guardians. But next up is the Mariners leading the AL West, and next up after that is the Yankees leading the AL East. Well, what is the focus of the next 10 days? Is it, okay, how many games is this? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9? Is it what? Go 4 and 5? Or what's the goal with such a difficult? I mean, and right after that, at the LA Dodgers, that's going to be challenging as well. So this is a really, really hard stretch for the for the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah, the schedule makers definitely didn't take it easy on Kansas City through the stretch, but they also gave the Royals a chance to, even if they play bad in some of those series, to be right in the division lead. Because I believe after that Dodgers series, it's Cleveland again at home. So, if you win these 2 games and then you somehow win the 2 games in that series, that's 4 games that you make up automatically in the division race. And I mean, being 5 games back is never something obviously that you want, but when you look at the Guardians playing the type of ball they're playing, again, you can't be too mad at it. So I think that going into these series against the Yankees, against the Dodgers, you want to go even. You want to stay in that division race. But, if you can take the games against the Guardians, the division ones that really matter, I don't think it truly matters too much if you lose series to teams like the Dodgers or the Yankees, as long as you don't get swept and you don't go out there and just play horribly.
All right, let's refocus back to today and tomorrow against the Guardians. What's going to be the pitching outlook? Who's going to be taking the mound for the Royals over the next 2 days?
Yeah, so today is Brady Singer. I expect Brady Singer to be very fresh. He didn't pitch last week because of a illness. That's why they had to call up Daniel Lynch from the minors. And I think that Brady Singer is the second or third guy on this team. Him and Reagans are very, very good. So you have to go out there and get a win. I'm not sure who's pitching for the Guardians. I believe it's Nick Sandelin, if I'm not incorrect. But that pitching matchup is going to be a good pitching matchup. Both pitchers under a 3 ERA for the season. And it's just going to be a contest that the Royals want to bounce back from yesterday because you put up 5 runs on McKenzie, who is supposed to be one of the better pitchers for the Guardians. And if you can come out today and do that again, you just really need your pitchers to show that they can do what they've been doing at home. They've been doing against other opponents and keep the other team to, 2-3 runs in order to pick up a win today.
Austin, we talked about gambling before on this show as it pertained to Shohei Ohtani, and obviously that has now been put behind him. I guess that's what the ruling was yesterday, that everything is put behind him. It wasn't his fault. But do you gamble at all?
No, not really.
Okay, I used to, but I figured out that there was a losing effort a long time ago. But you lose at a 95% clip. How do you lose 95% of your wagers, especially wagering on your own team? Tucupita Marcano from for the Pittsburgh Pirates, for the Pittsburgh Pirates is banned for life after wagering on his own team. Placed 387 baseball bets totaling more than $150,000 from October 2022 to last July. How do you lose 95% of your your wagers?
That is a new type of talented. I genuinely think that you could have placed a bet on the Pistons every game last year and you still would have had a better clip than 5%, because that's a special type of untalent. And every time I see these guys gamble their money away, it's never a substantial amount. Javon Porter was like $40,000. Marcano was $150,000, and these guys are making millions of dollars a year. So it always baffles me, especially with a 5% clip. It's just I don't even know where to start with that. I kind of need to see some of these just to see how bad he was at this, because that is impressive.
Well, yeah, I mean, you make a really good point. He wagered 150K. Okay, let's just say he lost. I mean, he clearly did lose almost all of it. But it's the future earnings. You're now banned from baseball, my man. You're like your contract, boom, ended. And so future earnings, you didn't lose 150K, and that's not a big deal to a Major League Baseball player. You lost the millions of dollars. How do you rectify these decisions in your mind, Austin?
You're beating me because if I was in a league like that, it would be practice, sleep. That's it. Eat, sleep, practice, play games. I can't imagine throwing away that much money over a couple parlays. I feel like after the 200th bet, he would have been like, wow, I really suck at this. Let me get off of this. I guess not. I guess you just persistence.
Persistence it is. We're about 6 weeks away from All-Star from the All-Star break. Yeah, middle of July, like the 12th or the 15th in July. We're probably the Royals are going to get Seth Lugo on the team. You're going to get Bobby Witt Jr. on the team. Are there any other big AL, big Kansas City Royals that are going to make their appearance in the All-Star game for the American League?
Yeah, I think another one that absolutely should make his All-Star appearance is Salvador Perez. His revamped season, hitting great at the plate. He started the season super high. He's been continuing the season super well. He's a guy that was in the All-Star game a lot before, with the old Royals of 2015-16. He kind of fell off the map a little bit, but the career resurgence that we've seen out of him, at least this season, has been spectacular. And he's been one of the best catchers in the league, not only behind the plate, but also he plays a little bit of first base. He plays a little, wherever they need him to play. And at the plate, he's just always great no matter his role, whether he's a DH, whether he's a catcher, whether he's a first baseman. You can always rely, on him to come to the plate to give you a couple of strong hits, to get a couple of singles, to hit behind guys like Michael and Bobby and Vinny. And he gives you the power that you need to hit in that fourth hole. And he's been great this season, and I don't see a reason why he shouldn't be in the All-Star game, especially with the fans that Kansas City has.
All right, let's go to another big picture story, baseball story. Middle of last week, Major League Baseball announces that they are going to move or accept or expand the record book to basically bring in all the Negro League baseball players and all the Negro League stats. I think a lot of people have felt that that's a positive thing, but what do you feel like that is? And what does that do to enrich the history of baseball?
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it a lot. I think that the leagues were very similar to each other. I don't think that there was really a talent gap in the leagues at the time to say, well, you can't really
the racism gap.
Yeah, that was it. Some of the best players were playing in the Negro Leagues. So when you say that, I think that the better argument would be that the stats don't hold up because they're old rather than they're in a lesser league. That's always how I've looked at it. I never really took you always have to take these old stats of, guys that are getting put in the Hall of Fame like Babe Ruth, like Ty Cobb, take it with a grain of salt because they're not hitting 105-mile-per-hour fastballs in the top of the zone today. And if one of them saw Seth Lugo's curveball, they would probably, fall out of their shorts. So, I always take it with a grain of salt. And I think that the people who, are saying that the leagues weren't as good just are incorrect because I think that the leagues at that time were very similar. I think that they were very comparable. I think that if you want to talk about anything, you might talk about the time that they were playing, but I think that it's great for baseball history, and I think it's great for baseball as a whole.
Kansas City Royals the next couple of days. Guardians at 5:40 today over there in Cleveland, and then they're going to be Guardians again at 12:10. If the Guardians are going to win the series, they got to win the next two games. If they're going to do that, what's it going to take in one sentence, Austin Bidwell?
Pitch well, hit early.
We like it. Pitch well, hit early. You're going to be following Austin Bidwell at Austin from KC. All his work on Inside the Royals or Royals Central. We're working to iron out these names right here on the Walsh Writing Network, and we appreciate Austin joining us for another week, man. Thanks so much. We'll catch up with you soon. Hopefully, it's not going to be 1-4 between visits again.
We'll see. Hopefully not, but we'll see next week, I guess.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for your time, Austin.
Thank you.
So that's going to do it for our show today. We appreciate Austin Bidwell and Matt Guzman joining us on the show to talk Major League Baseball and NBA. We're getting excited for the NBA Finals tomorrow at 7:30 on ABC. We'll get that going to see who is the NBA champion. Boston, if you can't get it done now, oh, man, you might break up the entire group because the way the championship path has been paved in gold for you guys this season. We'll see if they can get it done starting tomorrow on ABC. That's going to do it for our show today. We, as always, thank you for watching us on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. We thank you guys for listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. It's been a lot of fun hanging out with you guys today. We talked about Keelon Russell and his commitment a little bit deeper than we did yesterday. We talked about who he's going to be, what kind of a player he is. I think he's going to be very, very quality in this Alabama system, and I don't really have any concerns with the fact that, he was committed to SMU, so that means he must not be very good. No, this kid is a really good schematic fit for Kalen DeBoer's offense, and I think that he's going to have plenty of time to develop his body and prepare for SEC play once he comes to Tuscaloosa. It was a lot of fun hanging out with you guys. We're going to be talking to Jacob Bain tomorrow from Mississippi State Cowbell Corner on the Walsh Writing Network, and we'll keep things rolling right here on the Joe Gaither Show on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.